Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us. I am Jason Thomas, Project Portfolio Manager at America Makes, and I am joined today by my colleague, America Makes Technical Director Brandon Rick, PhD. He will answer any of the more technical questions if they should come in. We at America Makes are excited to kick off the Additive for Extreme Improvements in Optical Mounts, or AXIOM Project Call. Just a few important notes before we kick off the webinar. At the end of the presentation, there will be an opportunity for a question and answer session. So if during the presentation you have a question, please submit it in the Q&A space on your WebEx screen, and we'll do our best to answer it during the Q&A. Any questions that are not answered during the webinar will be posted to the facts page on the America Makes website, accompanied by the answer. To get started, this is just an overview of the things that we'll cover in today's webinar. And this is a schedule of the important dates to consider. The project call went live and was posted to the website last Wednesday, May 6th. I hope everyone saw that. Other dates to be concerned with are that questions from proposers about the scope or approach will be due by 5:20 at 5 p.m. We will post responses to those questions on the America Makes website on the 22nd. If you are not an America Makes member and you're the lead proposer and you need to gain membership, you'll need to do so by 6/5. And if their proposal is going to contain any proprietary information, you will need to have a fully executed NDA with NCDMM by that same date on the 5th. The full project proposal submission due date will be on the 8th of June. Just a note, there is no concept paper, so full project proposals will be due on that date. Our anticipated date of decision, and to let everyone know that who has been chosen, will be on the 18th. And our anticipated date to have our project kick off and on contract will be on August 1st of 2020. Okay, so next let's get into some background and the reason for the project call. Optical components face challenging environmental conditions while still being required to operate with great precision. They also need to be lightweight, stiff, and must be able to tolerate both high and low heats. These components are also manufactured using very difficult dimensional tolerances. There are also risks involved in manufacturing optical components. There are limited sources for needed supplies. They are very complex to fabricate, and materials historically used in the manufacturing of the components are toxic. The risks we just discussed can lead to increased cost and lead time. So now that we've covered some of those requirements and risks involved, let's talk about the objective. So ARL is seeking new approaches to manufacture optical components. They're interested in using exotic designs with conventional materials using additive manufacturing, or using additive manufacturing of conventional designs with new exotic materials. Using either of these approaches, teams would need to demonstrate some or all of the following. They would need to consider reduced cost, lead time compared to a baseline, using accessible and less toxic material, or improving on the following relative to baseline: stiffness and dampening, shock mitigation, weight, thermal management, and also geometric tolerances. So these predicted performance improvements, they must be validated over commercial off-the-shelf design material. So the next thing that I wanted to touch on was how this project call will align with the DoD roadmap. We see this aligning with the design, material, and value chain swim lanes. So when you're writing your proposal, you might want to take into account how you can link your proposal back to those areas. Another important aspect of the proposal is the eligibility requirements. The lead proposing organization must be a member in good standing by Friday, June 5th. Foreign or domestic members are eligible, but foreign members do need to keep in mind that the foreign membership process can take at least 3 weeks. Supporting team members are not required to be America Makes members. So the lead organization must be a member, but any subcontractors or team members, they do not need to be America Makes members. The next area I'm going to touch on is funding. The AXIOM Project Call will have one award, and that will be in the amount of $560,000 with the cost share match of $280,000 for a total of $840,000. The period of performance will be 21 months, which will break down to 18 months of technical and 3 months for final reporting. So we have already got some questions on cost share, so I did want to go over some of the cost share considerations. Just some examples of things that can be considered as cost share are material, labor hours, overhead, equipment, buildings, tuition, and software. Things that cannot be considered as cost share are the proposal costs, entertainment, alcohol, gifts, and things of that nature. The way that the cost share will be tracked during the project is the project team is responsible for submitting cost share forms monthly. That'll be the lead team. Cost share from supporting teams, it will be the lead organization's responsibility to collect those cost share forms and to submit them to America Makes Monthly. Additional information about cost share can be found on the America Makes website. So the deliverables that need to be considered for this project, there will be written and technical progress reports, except in the past we've done these monthly, and this being changed to quarterly. So there will still be project update calls each month or virtual meetings that will include the project team, the America Makes project manager, and the government advisor. Those will take place monthly, but written reports will only need to be handed in quarterly. Financial and man-hour reports will continue to be monthly. And you will have to do an annual briefing to the America Makes membership at least once a year. So that'll be at our MMX or TRX events. You will also have to present to at an AM community conference. This only needs to take place once during the period of performance. And the lead organization shall participate on at least one swim lane working group relevant to the subject matter of the project call. This will be done quarterly, and it will have to be documented in your technical project reports that will be handed in quarterly. You will also have to have a data management plan, key performance parameters, and also a planned project deliverables list with corresponding existing or new technology roadmap requirements. During the, in your proposal, you can have a draft, but the final data management plan and your project deliverables list must be handed in 1 month after the award. Okay, so on to the project call evaluation criteria. This is just how your proposal will be scored. Your executive summary will be given between 0 and 5 points. The technical approach and methodology will be 0 and 50. Technology dissemination to America Makes member and impact to the U.S. Air Force will be 30. Program management approach will be 0 to 15%. The exhibits that must be handed in along with your proposal are listed here. You will have to have identification of background on intellectual property, multiple submission summary. So if you're going to be submitting to more than one thing with this proposal, you'll have to submit that. Your letters of commitment, publication of consortium developed intellectual property, identification of consortium developed intellectual property, and deliverable artifacts. Of course, proposal cost summary. Now, these do not count towards your page count of your proposal. Okay, so some of the reporting requirements that are going to have to be dealt with are, if you are awarded the contract, there will be a kickoff meeting that will have to be held within 30 days of the contract award. As we talked about earlier, there will be financial and man-hour reports. Those are monthly. Virtual monthly team meetings, those are monthly. Quarterly written technical reports, as we talked earlier, those will be done quarterly. Your members meeting and exchanges, that's MMX or TRX events, those will be 1 time yearly. And delivery of your deliverable artifacts as identified in Exhibit 5. And then also your final report will have to be completed by the 21st. Okay, the questions and answers. So, as I mentioned earlier, questions from proposers about the project call, including scope or approach, they will be due the 20th before 5 p.m. Any questions that come in after that time on the 20th will not be answered. And then responses from us will be uploaded to the website on the 22nd. Frequently asked questions will be available on the AXIOM Project Call webpage under the available resources, or can be found at Project Call FAQ. You can email all questions about the project call to projectcall@americamix.us. All right, so on to our question and answers. Let's see. Okay, so can proprietary ITAR information be included in the proposal? Is this proposal considered under an NDA?
So this is Brandon. So one thing to consider there, if you look at the timeline that Jason outlined, we've asked the folks who need to have an NDA in place with NCDMM do so by the date that was provided. I believe that was June 5th. And that's kind of pertaining to the purpose of that deadline. Our organization is able to handle ITAR information, and if folks deem that that's necessary in order to support, an appropriate outline of their approach and justify what they're proposing, that can be handled. It's not a requirement that your proprietary information or ITAR restricted data be included in the proposal. But if teams or individuals deem that that is necessary and appropriate to include, we are able to handle that sort of information, and we'll be managing all that data appropriately.
All right, thank you, Brandon. Next question: is this program geared towards a specific material type? Metal, polymer, ceramic, or composite? No, there's no specific material type. Like we said earlier, they are looking for new approaches. So, if you have an idea and you'd like to propose to it, we're open to it. All right, are exotic designs with exotic materials of interest? I would think so. I mean, that's in the description we gave. So, Brandon, do you have anything to add on that?
I think one thing to add there is that, a team who is considering both an exotic design as well as what I would call an accessible exotic material for their proposal needs to appropriately address a risk mitigation strategy that considers the pros and cons and how that will be mitigated. That being said, there is no favorable approach as it states in the RFP. Those are just two proposed concepts of how to approach this problem or the project call scope. And it is envisioned that we're looking for innovative solutions. And so we would welcome, those approaches and look forward to learning about what folks have in mind there.
Okay, thank you. Okay, our next question: will equipment purchase count excuse me, towards cost share? Yes, equipment purchase does count towards cost share. That was one of the things that I covered during the presentation. So let's see, what are the difficult tolerances that need to be held? Brandon, can you help?
Sure, certainly. So that's going to vary depending upon the application space that the team elects to address. Of course, I would urge a team, as it states in the RFP, to consider how they're going to baseline that and where they're going to draw comparison to a commercial off-the-shelf solution. But just to give a public example of something that is complementary to the scope of this proposal, just did a quick Google search here in the background, and I mean, a really great public example is something some of us may be aware of, is like the James Webb Space Telescope. Now, we're not necessarily saying that this call is geared towards these specific type of optical systems, but in some instance here, you see examples where some of the tolerances are on the order of nanometers. And so it can be particularly challenging whenever we start to think about of inserting an additively manufactured product into a scenario where those types of dimensional tolerances are necessary. I would urge teams to, substantiate their approach. And again, I cannot emphasize here, as it states in the RFP enough, appropriate risk mitigation strategies and plans do need to be well outlined. We appreciate that there's quite a bit of innovation opportunity here with this call, and that's understood. But again, it does need to be compared back to a baseline commercial off-the-shelf solution.
Okay, thank you. All right, now the next question, is the goal to take MRL4 technology to MRL7? Right, Brandon, could you help with this one as well?
I don't think the RFP is specifically looking to address all the necessary risks as it would pertain to a high MRL or TRL like 7. That's nearing, production or pre-production type readiness levels for the technology. I think, what is needed is an appropriate approach to outline how the team's going to validate their design and or material selection approach and appropriately baseline that in a sensible fashion. In my mind, that probably aligns more to a TRL 5 or 6. Don't know necessarily if there's going to be enough opportunity for teams to generate a statistically significant amount of data that would be necessary to claim a TRL 6. So that might be a bit ambitious, but I don't want to necessarily deter folks from being ambitious here because, again, we are talking about accessible exotic materials or exotic designs and very challenging applications. But I don't think necessarily we're looking to attain a demonstration of full production. I will emphasize, though, the stakeholders for this project call are very much interested in the team clearly demonstrating an ability to generate appropriate cost information, meaning baselining their approach and methodology to a commercial off-the-shelf solution, and also substantiating lead time savings. So that being stated, that is very important here and must be kept in mind whenever putting forth a proposal.
Okay, thank you. Next question. Will a data package, for example, CAD, load cases, etc., just the state of in existing optical mount designs be released? I don't believe so. Brandon, if you know different, you can share with me, but I think you'll have your own research into that. Okay, next question. Is this project geared towards optical mounts or optics? So this project is optical mounts, but when looking at a system as a whole, the mounts are going to interact with the optics. So you want to take all of that into consideration.
So something to add to that, Jason, is that if a proposal did include details about the synergy between the optical mount and the optical system, uh, there is interest not exclusively in optically transparent materials, but the interest is probably more leaning towards mirror systems or systems which include a mirror. And so either or are welcome, and we appreciate the synergy between the optics as well as the optical mount. But Jason's statements are accurate. But to kind of elaborate on some of that, I would say it's a bit more leaning towards mirrors.
Let's see. Okay, can you clarify the anticipated TRL, MRL levels for this work? So I think Brandon mentioned this is going to be between a 4 and a 6, correct? Where you see this
Yeah,
landing?
so the commercial off-the-shelf solution is likely already well beyond a TRL 7. But in order to kind of baseline the data which teams will be producing, it could be readily envisioned a scenario where teams will successfully demonstrate in select instances TRL 5. I don't know. I don't believe necessarily that a team will have sufficient time and funds to fully build out what's required for TRL 7. Of course, I don't want to deter teams from doing that. And if a team or an individual would feel that they can appropriately do that, we would welcome that. But I think it's very important that the minimum criteria which are outlined in the RFP are addressed first and foremost, and that is to successfully demonstrate equivalence or improvement over a commercial off-the-shelf solution, because that is the desired outcome here, to be able to substantiate cost savings or lead time reduction while maintaining some semblance of equivalency in terms of performance. And there are quite a few challenging requirements there, to say the least.
Thank you. Okay, so next question. Is there requirement of levels of membership? No, I think you just have to be an America Makes member, and more information can be found on the America Makes website about becoming a member and all the details involved in that process. For teaming purposes, is America Makes helping connect interested parties through any page on America Makes site or any email list? No, not that I know of. You have to, make your own project team, and that's through coming to our events and networking and getting involved in different things in the organization. Let's see. I think something we are covered a little bit ago here. What rough size scale for these components? Millimeters or or meters? Brandon, do you have anything you can add on that?
I think that's going to vary, but some it's going to vary depending upon the application and the component function and how it integrates into a subassembly. I'm sure a lot of folks on the line can envision there's probably a wide array of application spaces here, from defense and space and other industries where these types of systems are readily integrated into a number of platforms. And so I think the scale can vary quite substantially. As the RFP states, there really isn't necessarily a particular length scale of interest. It's more along the lines of being able to successfully demonstrate that performance equivalence while realizing cost and lead time savings.
Okay. Can you define an accessible exotic material? Yeah, Brandon, I'm going to have to kick this one over to you if you have any ideas on
Sure.
that.
So the way I've interpreted that, and we can all go off and also get further clarification if necessary, but the way the RFP, at least I read it, is that an exotic material, and why it's in quotes as it is maybe this is not a material that's readily used in these applications today, but through the opportunity of using an additive manufacturing process or an additive manufacturing design methodology, which unlocks new design degrees of freedom, we can utilize a material that may not be prevalent in additive manufacturing today. That being said, though, this material needs to be readily acquired, and that's what's mean through the term accessible. We don't want to create other lead time challenges because of material sourcing complexities, but it may not necessarily be a material that's prevalent in additive manufacturing today, and that's what's meant by exotic. But, case in point, it's very important for teams to remember that when they're doing their material selection efforts, to keep those performance criteria in mind as well.
Okay, thank you. Okay, can you repeat if mirrors or mounts are the focus? So, Brandon, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I believe mounts are the focus, but you want to take everything into consideration.
So the focus of the call is specifically on mounts, but we recognize that these sister systems can operate as a whole, right? So there may be novel approaches to looking at the system more holistically, and we don't want to necessarily restrict people that if they would like to include a select portion of their response to address, or expand upon where they feel that there can be additional value added through their approach, that they can offer a benefit to the stakeholders on in terms of the mirrors or the optics themselves. That's wonderful. And we don't want to deter that, but the focus is the mounting system. Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right. So this question, I think this will be our last question, and I like I said, I do apologize if we weren't able to get to yours. Some of these questions we will have to do some research, and like I said, they will be posted to the America Makes website under the Project Call tab. You can go there, and we will post your question along with the answer. All right. Does the performance for the material design approach need to be substantiated on the system level or on the material property level? CTE, modulus, density, thermal conductivity, etc., or both levels, system and material? Brandon, can you help with this one?
I would leave that to the team to decide what is most appropriate. Of course, we would love to get to as high of a TRL level as possible, given the funding available. But as I kind of stated before, we recognize there's quite a bit of performance requirements here to consider, given the complexity of some of these applications. And so therefore, it may not be possible to do a full substantial evaluation at a subassembly level or at the component level. But that being said, we want to encourage innovative approaches here. And I think I'll leave that decision up to the teams. But really, I see both of those being of interest. It's just a matter of kind of weighing that out and making sure that what's being delivered as a result of the proposed effort is providing the greatest value to advancing the state of the art in this space.